Who's the Mac? I'm the Mac, use the Mac. Kicking against the limping pimp like Pretty Tone. Now it's your herringbone I'm wearing home. Dearly beloved, I'm so low budget, no gold nuggets. Chillin' willin' the two-dough cutlass, same old bucket. The hoes love it. In fact, I got hoes bewitched with the game I spit to get more pussy cat than he clipped. Hey, what up? Somebody left a fucked up code on my box. What it say? 187 hops.
Luniz, Oakland, California, featuring Yukmouth and Numskull, active since 1992. Hip-hop in the 90s was ruthless. For every artist who made it, there were 100 more who never got their shot. And for those who did, the real battle was staying relevant. Longevity in rap was never guaranteed. Labels moved on fast, fans had short memories, and if you didn't evolve, you got left behind. Luniz didn't seem like they'd have that problem. Coming out of Oakland, California, the duo of Yukmouth and Numskull had everything you needed to make it in the game. Personality, chemistry, a distinct sound that represented their city, and most importantly, a hit record that refused to die. Their 1995 debut album, Operation Stackola, went platinum off the strength of one of the biggest hip-hop anthems ever, I Got 5 on It. That song wasn't just a hit, it was a moment. A cross-generational, culture-defining record that you couldn't escape. Whether it was playing at house parties, booming through car speakers, or getting new life in horror movies decades later, I Got 5 on It became bigger than the group itself. But that was the problem. For most artists, a platinum debut on a global smash would be the start of something bigger, a stepping stone to an even greater run. But for Luniz, I Got 5 on It wasn't the beginning, it was the peak. Their follow-up album, Lunitik Muzik, dropped in '97 with high expectations, but the buzz wasn't the same. The industry was moving on, newer artists were taking over, and without another major hit to keep them in rotation, Luniz began slipping into the background. What should have been the next chapter in their success story turned into the start of their decline. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the duo was dealing with their own problems. Yukmouth stayed active in music, launching a solo career and keeping his name in the streets, but Numskull's path took a different turn. Legal issues and personal struggles kept him away from rap, further breaking the group's momentum. By the early 2000s, Luniz had already become a Remember Them name. They'd reunite here and there, drop projects independently, and remind fans they were still around, but the game they entered was vastly different and moving fast into new sounds and even bigger artists. So the name Luniz faded from the spotlight, but I Got 5 on It never did. Still to this day, it's one of the more recognizable songs from 90s era hip-hop, but why couldn't they continue that success? What happened? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth Music. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Luniz is a rap group that came up in the streets of Oakland, California, a city with a rich hip-hop history but few mainstream rap stars at the time. Yukmouth and Numskull met as teenagers, forming a duo originally called Looney Tunes before changing their name to Luniz. Their style was a perfect blend of raw Bay Area energy, street storytelling, and humor, setting them apart from both East Coast lyricists and G-Funk heavy West Coast acts. Their big break came in 1995 when they dropped Operation Stackola under No Tribe/Virgin Records. Fueled by the success of I Got 5 on It, the album went platinum, making them one of the hottest new groups in rap. The song's eerie bass-heavy beat and catchy hook turned into a global anthem, but it also set an impossible standard. Fans wanted more, but as Luniz would soon find out, lightning rarely strikes twice in hip-hop. Stunt number 1, no follow-up hit. The fastest way to disappear in hip-hop is to have nothing to follow up to your biggest moment. For Luniz, I Got 5 on It wasn't just a hit, it was a monster. The kind of song that takes on a life of its own, outliving trends, generations, and even the artists who made it. But as big as it was, it created a problem. Luniz became known for one song and one song only. Their second album, Lunitik Muzik, dropped in 1997, 2 years after their platinum debut. Expectations were high, but the reception was lukewarm. It had solid production and big-name features, including Too Short, Redman, and Busta Rhymes, but it didn't have a record that could match I Got 5 on It. The closest thing was Hypnotize, but even with a push, it never reached the same level of mainstream success. This is where the gap between popularity and sustainability in rap became clear. Without a strong second hit, Luniz found themselves in an awkward space, too big to be underground but not big enough to stay mainstream. Other artists from the Bay like E40 built their legacies through consistency, dropping albums year after year and evolving with the sound. Luniz, however, didn't have that same foundation. The late 90s were unforgiving to artists who couldn't keep up, and without another major single, Luniz lost to casual fans who only knew them for one record. While the core Bay Area audience still supported them, the mainstream had already moved on to the new wave of artists. In an era where hit records kept you relevant, Luniz learned the hard way. One song can make you famous, but without a follow-up, it won't keep you there. Stunt number 2, Internal Struggles and Separate Paths. If hip-hop has proven anything, it's that duos rarely last. From Outkast to Mobb Deep, history shows that even the strongest partnerships eventually face challenges. For Luniz, the bond between Yukmouth and Numskull wasn't enough to withstand the pressures of the music industry, and as their careers stalled, their relationship began to crack. While Luniz struggled to follow up their breakout success, Yukmouth decided to take his career into his own hands. In the late 90s and early 2000s, he launched his solo career, releasing multiple albums and mixtapes that kept him active in the underground scene. He embraced the independent hustle, working with artists across the West Coast and beyond, carving out a niche audience that followed him beyond the Luniz name. Numskull's path was different and far less productive. Instead of focusing on music, his career took a downward spiral due to legal issues, incarceration, and personal setbacks. By the early 2000s, while Yukmouth was dropping solo projects and staying relevant in the street rap circles, Numskull was dealing with problems that kept him away from the booth. The duo would reunite, but the chemistry wasn't the same, and they were no longer a priority in the industry. This divide created another major issue. Luniz never built a consistent brand as a group. Unlike E40, who turned himself into a Bay Area legend through sheer output, and even duos like UGK, who stayed locked in together despite setbacks, Luniz felt more like two artists moving in separate directions. Their lack of unity made it hard for fans to stay invested, and labels weren't interested in an inconsistent act. By the time they had tried to make a comeback, hip-hop had moved forward. A duo that wasn't even fully together had no chance of competing with the new wave. Stunt number 3, Industry Shifts and Losing Relevance. Timing in hip-hop is everything. An artist can be talented, have a hit record, and even build a loyal fan base, but if they don't evolve with the game, they'll get left behind. For Luniz, this became a major problem as rap changed dramatically in the late 90s and early 2000s, and they didn't change with it. By the time their second album, Lunitik Muzik, failed to match their debut success, the rap landscape was already shifting. The West Coast had lost its dominance in mainstream hip-hop, and a new wave of artists was taking over. In 1998, DMX exploded onto the scene, bringing a raw, aggressive energy that made Luniz' playful weed-smoking style feel outdated. Meanwhile, Jay-Z and Rockefeller were redefining what it meant to be a rap superstar, while the rise of the South, led by Cash Money and No Limit, brought a whole new sound that pushed West Coast artists further to the margins. Luniz didn't adapt. They were still making music, but they weren't evolving with the times. Yukmouth was active in the underground, but without major label backing or big marketing pushes, his music only reached a small audience. Numskull, dealing with legal troubles, wasn't even a factor. With no strong industry presence, Luniz faded into the background. At the same time, the business of rap was changing. The industry was shifting away from groups and prioritizing solo artists who could sell themselves as full-fledged brands. The days of rap duos dominating mainstream hip-hop were coming to an end. Without label support and without a second hit to keep them relevant, Luniz became a 90s relic, known for one song that refused to die, but a career that did. All in all, Luniz had everything they needed to last: talent, charisma, and a record that cemented them in hip-hop history. But as time passed, their success became a story of missed opportunities, internal struggles, and an industry that moved on without them. They never found a second hit, their chemistry as a duo fell apart, and they failed to adapt to rap's changing landscape. By the 2000s, they were no longer a force in the game. Yukmouth kept grinding in the underground, but Numskull's legal issues kept him away from music. They reunited for projects, but the magic was gone. Meanwhile, I Got 5 on It took on a life of its own, becoming bigger than the group itself. Luniz may not have built a lasting career, but that one song kept them from being forgotten. Their names faded from the spotlight, but their anthem never did. Salute, much respect, but for these reasons, their growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music, and I'm out.